Hi guys, welcome to the unboxing video of the all new Feiyu Tech G3 Ultra 3-axis brushless gimbal. As you can see here, here's the box here. You'll notice also in the shot at the moment is the 3-axis Ultra handheld version. You may have already seen my video on that. It's had a fair few hits, and I think Feiyu Tech are actually using it on their website at the moment. Now I have to admit, when I grabbed this one from Feiyu Tech, I was on the understanding, or at least hoping, that I would be able to move this gimbal from here, put it on a power distribution board as per the 2-axis gimbal, and use it on an aircraft, because I do a lot of multi-rotor flying, fixed wing flying these days as well. I did ask Feiyu Tech about this when they released the 3-axis version for the Aero, and unfortunately they said no, you can't do that. Now, whether or not that is 100% sure, I'm still yet to decide. My intention was to take the gimbal off the handheld mount here via these two screws, take apart this panel. The plug is definitely the same. It's a question of whether or not the power distribution board would work. Anyway, main problem is that these screws right here, these hex 2.5mm hex bolts here, are made pretty much of chocolate, and within about 5 seconds of trying to get it undone, I'd completely strip them. Net result is, if I want to get this off the handheld rig, I could do it, but I'm going to have to drill them out or find some interesting way of doing it. I really like the handheld rig, as you've seen from the video. I've been using it a lot actually as a handheld one, so I didn't really want to destroy it for this. Feiyu Tech obviously brought out the Aero version I think it was about a month afterwards. I want a 3-axis gimbal. I've always had an intention of getting one. My intention was probably to get the Zenmuse 3D 3-axis version. However, I haven't actually got around to getting that, so I decided, we're going to go with this one. So anyway, so this is, like I say, an unboxing video for the moment, and obviously I will be doing some further testing to see how it all goes. So let's just see what we've got in the box to start with, and I'll talk a little bit about the differences between the Aero version and the handheld version. So, standard format, warranty card and instruction manual. In this box here we have the gimbal itself. Just take that out of there. Okay, now, immediate differences with the Aero version is the motor casing. Let's take a look at the two. Motor casing on the handheld rig is metal, motor casing on the Aero version is plastic. Obviously they've done that to save some weight, which is an interesting one. It feels a little bit sort of cheaper, a little bit tackier, I guess, but then again it does save a bit of weight, so I can't complain too much, and it does feel very nice and light actually. I'm surprised. It's I'll get it on the scales later on and we'll find out how much it weighs compared to the 2-axis version that I've also got. Anyway, so that's the gimbal side of things, and we'll bung that down there. Okay, also in this box we have the dampeners. Now I'm very much hoping, although by the feel of it I'm not sure they have, I'm hoping that they've actually improved these. The 2-axis version had some awfully soft rubber dampeners, and one of my main complaints with the 2-axis version, after they sorted a bunch of the firmware out, was that actually there was a lot of bounce. There was a noticeable wobble, and it was all caused by these really soft dampeners. Unfortunately, Feiyu, by the looks of it, haven't decided to open up the holes to the same size, the 8mm, as the DJI dampeners, so you don't have a choice quite as large as you do with DJI, where you can put the thermal ones in there. But anyway, I'm not going to criticise them just yet. We'll give them a go first and foremost. And what else have we got in the box? We also have the mounting brackets. Now, interestingly, on this version, by the looks of it, there is no power distribution at all. It's just two fiberglass brackets. I'll get them out of the bag so you can see a little bit better. While they are printed on what is probably a PCB type board, there is no actual power distribution in there at all. So yeah, so the idea is once it's above the other, obviously I'll have a look at the instructions in a moment, see how that all goes together. And also in the box what do we got in here? So let's just move that box out of the way. So in the little box we have got the mountings for the rail mounts. We have got a new style mount for the GoPro. So this is the thing that goes on the front of it and holds the camera on. Nice fit. Now, immediately, first impressions, this is made of plastic. It's not made of metal, so again, there's going to be some weight saving. Interestingly, this has now got some brass inserts with the threads in them. One of my big problems, again, with one of the two axis gimbals that I actually ended up with, was these came as a one-piece kind of cast bit of aluminium, and the threads were very easy to actually strip. And in fact, one of my gimbals, it got to a point where I could not even use this ring. You can buy a replacement. I think they're pretty much identical to the Taro ones, but in the UK, getting hold of one of those easily, cheaply, without spending a fortune in Hong Kong postage or anything, is quite difficult. And frankly, I couldn't be bothered because I had two gimbals. I only used one at a time. So yeah, but it's nice to see that this has got some brass inserts. So hopefully this is going to last a little bit longer. Again, just moving over to the handheld version. With the handheld version, as in my review, I mentioned that they've used this metal bar across the front here and these thumb screws. Now, it's quite interesting to see that with this one, they have gone with the thumb screws, which is good. I see in that little packet there. So they have got the same thumb screws, but they've chosen not to adopt this bar. It was something I mentioned in my review of this because I was going to use it for flight. My worry, of course, is if you undo this slightly and then you have a bit of a bash around. Oh dear, oh, my GoPro's fallen out and smashed into the ground. So anyway, that's going to prevent that. The fact that they're using one of these, the fact it's plastic and it's got some brass things, that's a definite improvement. And you've got thumb screws, which makes a whole lot easier than using an Allen key, which is inevitably going to just end up stripping and causing problems. So so that's good. Whilst I'm here, what I'm going to do, I will just quickly stick the camera on it. Put the bracket there, grab my thumb screws. Looks as if they give us some spares as well, which is nice. Yeah, there's a spare thumb screw in there, which is something that I do like to see from manufacturers these days. They're actually giving replacement parts, so you don't have to send off for them if you lose them down the back of the sofa, which will inevitably happen at some point. Okay, so a thumb screw tie in there, thumb screw in there. So much easier than having to use an Allen key. Even worse when you get out in the field and you find you've forgotten your Allen key, and then you've got all sorts of problems. So that is the gimbal all mounted like that. So power distribution is not going to go through the boards this time. Power distribution is going direct to these servo cables. So that's another big change, and this is probably the reason why they told me that the compatibility would be different on the Aero version. How many cables we've got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Interesting, yeah. So there's 5 wires going into the back of the main motor here, and that is probably the main reason why the gimbal on here is not compatible, because the only wires going into the back of the main motor on this, there are 4 cables, just like the 2-axis version. So interesting to note that. So if you do think, oh, I'll play it safe, I'll buy a mount or I'll work out a way, at the moment, as far as I can see, until I maybe strip this down, the handheld version will not be compatible for flying. So if you want a flying version, get yourself one of these. The advantage is the handheld version is a damn sight more expensive anyway. It's a very nice thing, good bit of kit, I enjoy it, but frankly, for the money, £169 I think these are selling for. Hopefully, if they perform as well as the handheld one goes, it's going to be a good investment, and obviously nearly £100 cheaper than the DJI one, which will inevitably be the better gimbal. I have no doubt about that, because it taps into the NASA IMU directly. I'm always of the opinion that so far in testing, Feiyu Tech's gimbals have been fantastic, but unfortunately they just don't quite have the same level of quality in regards to the motion stabilization as the DJI ones. Also in the box then, so we've got our standard USB one. They seem to change this every 20 minutes, so I've got about 20 of these now. Difference is that this USB for the firmware updating now comes with a plug-in, And in the box here, so we've got a standard servo wire. That's going to be for power, no doubt, from your actual flying device, whatever it may be. The good thing with these gimbals is that they can take whatever voltage. Frankly, you can use 3S, 4S. I think you can go a little bit higher than that, but certainly I've used them on 3S and 4S, and they cope absolutely fine. So there's your rig that plugs into your USB device, and then you can do the firmware update. Firmware update, the way it's done is going to be absolutely identical to the way the handheld one's done, and I've just got a video which I've done that, so take a look at that if you've got any questions about how to update the firmware on here. If I find there's any major differences, obviously I will do a video about how to update the firmware on that. So anyway, so that's the unboxing, that's what you get. Obviously all I've got to do now is do a bit of construction. What I'll do is I'll put it together quickly, come back and you can see how it all goes together, and then eventually what I'll do is I'll get a proper review of how it works, put it on an aircraft, and we'll give it a test. Okay, so just coming back quickly, I've just started putting this thing together. First thing that I note, which I thought I'd make mention to, in the typical way that Feiyu Tech have done a couple of times on their instructional manuals in the past, they tell you to put the thing together, but they unfortunately get it a little bit wrong. In the section number 1, they show you, as you can see here, to basically put the entire mount together, put your brackets on the top of it, your rail brackets, put all your dampeners in place, screw it all together, and then mount the gimbal. Now, there's a bit of a problem with that, because let's just pretend for a moment, as I did, that you put your brackets on the lower board here. Very nice. And then you've got your other one, and hang on, wait, oh, I can't, I can't, oh dear. So basically the whole point is that you can't actually mount the top plate with this, or at least one of them, in place, so don't be fooled. Now what you do that, put one of them in place, get your dampeners in, then you screw that on. Then it says mount the gimbal afterwards. Now I'm going to do that in a moment, and I'll tell you whether or not that works as well. Okay, so that's all together, and a couple of things just to notice. Sure enough, the dampeners, they're definitely a lot better than the original 2-axis version. They are smaller, I don't know if you can see that, but that is a DJI one, and it is taller, and it is fatter, and it is more solid, to be honest. They have used 6 of them on this frame, which is good, so the dampening should be alright. And also the other thing to note is that with the gimbal hanging down, it is under compression, it's not under tension. So in other words, you're not relying on these rubber balls holding your gimbal on. It is actually a case of the weight of the gimbal is pressing down on the spheres, and hence you get the dampening. But I do think they look a lot more solid than the originals, like I say, so that's good news. Now the other questions that are going to come up about this gimbal, no doubt, and obviously the review will cover this in a little bit more detail. Mounting options, at the moment this is the only mount that they do for it. Whether they're going to come out with a DJI Phantom mount like they did with the last one is unknown. They seem to do that a fair amount. The fact that there's no power distribution on this board makes the options much easier. So you literally just mount the gimbal itself via these 4 little screws here to a metal bracket on the gimbal. So you really don't need to use this bracket at all, and frankly, if it's anything like the dampening that was on the 2-axis version, I would recommend just getting shot of it if it's going to be that bad, but hopefully it won't be. But that gives you a few mounting options. So you can mount it as with the other one, as we're facing on here. You can mount it so it's hanging down. So let's just assume there's an aircraft here, and this is hanging down from it. But likewise, you can also mount it like this. So the aircraft now is behind here, and this is now facing forward. So the gimbal is actually now in a forward facing momentum, and the camera is on top. Now that means that you can mount it to aircraft, you can mount it to, well, a number of different platforms basically, which is one of the main selling points in my mind for this rather than a Zenmuse, because a Zenmuse you've got to have a NASA, it's got to be tied into it, you can only hang it under something. It's great for multi-rotors, no denying that, and obviously if you're using DJI NASA for your multi-rotor it's fantastic, but you are locked down to that flight controller. This, as you can see, power wise, you've just got these cables, and in fact if you just wanted to power up the gimbal, looking at the cable configuration, you literally just have to have a servo wire which is supplied with red and black coming out of your battery, and that just goes boom straight into this little plug here. That will power up and turn on your gimbal, and it will work in its standard mode. What you've got to bear in mind, of course, is that this doesn't just have one mode. It's not just a case of it will stabilize. The Feiyu Tech gimbals, as you may have seen from my handheld version, they've got 3 modes, one of which will allow you to just have a nice steady movement. However, it will track the momentum. So for example, let's imagine it's hanging down from an aircraft. You're around your aircraft. What will happen is your camera will notice that, and it will do a nice steady pan. So unlike the old 2-axis version, it would do this with the aircraft. What will now happen is that as you're round quickly, it will slowly come around with you, and it gives you a nice steady shot. And that's really the key to the 3-axis, is that this motor provides you with a really nice smooth pan. The second mode, certainly on the handheld version, that actually allows the tilt to follow it. So let's say you tilt the model forward. Normally you tilt the model forward and the camera would stay in its fixed position. With the tilt mode, what happens is you tilt the model forward and the camera will actually follow it. And on the handheld rig, that's how you can actually look down. You can kind of, look over a bridge or something like that, rather than the buttons that used to be on the 2-axis version that would do the tilt. And obviously you could do that from your transmitter. Now with the flight version, I do believe, and obviously this will be tested, that all of these other wires here, these will go into your RX, which is kind of frightening when I look at the fact that there's 3 of them. But it will give you the ability of controlling the tilt, and it will give you the ability, I believe, of controlling the roll as well. And the third version of the mode, which is going to be switchable, of course, is you have the heading lock mode. And in heading lock mode, basically, wherever your camera's pointed, when you flip it into that mode, it will stay there. So if your gimbal, if your craft is all over the shop up here, this camera is going to face that way. Obviously the only issue is if you then yaw your camera around all the way round and it hits the barrier, it's going to go boom, 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 and it starts glitching out. Not great demonstration while sitting here with the camera in the orientation that it's at, but anyway, like I say, I'm going to do the full review of it. I'll get it in a better orientation, I'll get it powered up, and I'll give you a demonstration of all of those modes, how they all work. I'll get it tied into my transmitter, and if I can get it mounted to a Phantom, or at least a NASA device, I will see whether or not you can use the NASA assistant to control certainly the pitch, and whether or not you can do anything else with it. That is yet to be seen. But yeah, tune in, and hopefully I will have that review for you certainly within the next few days, weather permitting.